Memorizing is pointless when you don't understand the context behind it. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Luis. I'm a medical student from the Philippines and I make videos on how to study effectively and be more productive as a student. And in this video, I'll be going over my tips on how you can use Anki effectively for your lectures in school. If you're new to Anki, I recommend you check out my previous video on the basics of Anki and then come back to this video afterwards. One common mistake that most students commit when using Anki for the first time is that they treat it as some magical tool that will help them learn all the material completely through memorization alone. In a field like medicine, this can be detrimental because it's not guaranteed that the information you've memorized will be presented in the exact same way on the exam. More often than not, examiners will include more 2-step or even 3-step questions for you to analyze rather than just a simple 1-step question. Therefore, it's important to take the time to actually understand the content you're learning and not just blindly memorize it and take it at face value. As the YouTuber Ali Abdaal likes to put it, it's important not to lose the forest from the trees. It can be very tempting to make a flashcard for every piece of information you come across in a lecture, book chapter, trance, or video on the internet. And what this results is just you ending up with hundreds of flashcards, which will make it very hard for you to keep up with your daily reviews. Therefore, you should keep the amount of cards you create per lesson to a bare minimum. Like a good surgeon, knowing when not to use a tool is just as important of knowing when to use it. That being said, when is it appropriate to use Anki? Well, when studying the material, ask yourself this question. What is an examinable fact that I need to memorize that I can't just rely on understanding for? For example, making a card on the phenomenon that the lungs expand during inhalation and contract during exhalation is a bad card because you can already deduce that the lungs would need to expand to accommodate more air and contract to force air out. A good example of a card worth making is on the fact that the human lungs can accommodate up to 6 liters of air. This is a good example because first, it's a very specific fact, and second, you cannot necessarily derive this information from logic alone. As I alluded to in the first principle, memorizing is pointless when you don't understand the context behind it. One technique I learned for applying these principles is from the YouTuber Premade, where he would include all the references for that card in the extra portion of the closed deletion card format. He would include screenshots of the lecture, tables, and his own personal notes from it. So that way, when he went to review the card and he didn't understand necessarily what is the context behind it, he could immediately refer to the extra portion of the card to refer back to the material. Like with the amount of cards you make per lecture, the same principle applies with the amount of information you put per card. Less is more. It's not very effective to just copy and paste an entire paragraph or list of words and just close delete them in the hopes that you'll memorize the entire thing. Instead, try to rephrase the information into something simpler that you believe the professor can ask during the exam. Also, a nice general rule to follow when making these flashcards is to limit the number of chunks of information to 4. However, you can adjust this based on your needs. A caveat to this principle is that when you need to memorize signs and symptoms, sometimes you have no choice but to memorize an entire list of signs and symptoms because being able to know the entire clinical picture can help you narrow down your differentials in the exam. For example, if I were to make a card on the symptoms of Cushing's syndrome, I would chunk the pieces of information based on where they lie in the body from head to toe and proximally distally and make closed deletion cards from there. My last tip for you guys is to make sure to refine your cards over time. No set of notes is perfect the first time you make it, so make sure to constantly improve your cards as you review them over time. If you find yourself getting a card wrong over and over again, maybe consider revising the wording of the question so that it can properly elicit the information from your memory. Additionally, if you come across a reference or a mnemonic that can help you better understand the card, add that to the card as well. And like a fine wine, the card should get better over time. So to recap what we went over in this video, I gave 5 tips for how to use Anki effectively in lectures. These are: understand the material before you memorize it, keep the amount of cards per lecture to a minimum, always include context for the question in your cards, keep the amount of information for your cards to a minimum, and lastly, always improve your cards over time. And that's it for the video guys. If you found this video helpful, please consider leaving a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.